Oprah Winfrey, and every man in our audience today is divorced. We've all heard the gloomy forecast. 1 out of every 2 marriages will fail. What caused the breakup for these men? How did the I love yous turn to I'm leaving you? What can you do to prevent it from happening to your marriage? Could it be about to happen in your house, but you haven't picked up the clues? Well, my first guests say that after polling over 400 divorced men to find out why their marriages disintegrated, the results were very surprising. Meet the author of the article, Why Men Divorce, and her most recent book, Living in Sync, Men and Women in Love, Dr. Lois Lederman-Davids. My next guest says that men are making less and less commitments to relationships these days. He's the author of this book, Why Men Are the Way They Are. Meet Dr. Warren Farrell. And my last guest runs groups for divorced fathers and says that often it's much more painful for a man to leave his children than his wife. He is the director of the Fatherhood Project at Boston University and the president-elect of the Massachusetts Psychological Association. Please welcome Dr. Ron Levant. All my guests to the show. Welcome them all. And just as I was speaking, I heard you shaking your head. Why?
Because the children are the most important issue here. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we make mistakes, mm-hmm. but the children pay for them.
Why did you leave?
I didn't.
Or were left?
When my wife became involved with another man. Mm-hmm. But the point is that the child suffered, mm-hmm. suffered greatly. Mm-hmm. And it took, you know, through the courts are not sympathetic, judges are not sympathetic. And I have great peace with my child and great peace with his mother.
How old is your child?
7. And with the stepfather. Mm-hmm. And I think the major reason is because I had faith and hope and love, and I prayed. Mm-hmm. And it's come about, and without lawyers.
Without lawyers.
Exactly.
Why did you leave, or she left you? Why? Why did you divorce?
Well, she left me because it was financial problems, and I guess I worked too hard. But I have a 3-year-old daughter, which I get to see for 6.5 hours a week, mm-hmm. and still have to pay child support. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I agree with him that it's the child who's suffering right now, not, you know, the parent, the mothers and the fathers.
Okay. You left because what?
I'm not divorced.
You're not divorced. What are you doing here then? God bless you. Why did you leave? Yes.
Well, it was really immaturity. I was married when I was 17 years old, mm-hmm. and my wife was 19. And we met when we was in 7th grade. We went together all through high school, uh-huh. and once we got married, things started going wrong.
Immaturity. You left because of what? You left because of what?
I left because I was on an eye trip. I didn't concern myself enough with the family as I did with myself, trying to build my fortune. Didn't think of taking care of the rest of the family, my wife.
You left because of what?
Well, I left because I became more of a parent to my wife than I did as a husband, and I could no longer tolerate treating her just as a child and not as a wife.
You're shaking your head. Why? You same problem?
Yes, I had the same problem. And the fact that I got tired of ducking pots and pans and things of that nature. But it was really being a parent to a wife instead of a husband.
Okay. You left because?
Well, I didn't really leave. We were going to a marriage counselor, and she didn't show up for the marriage counselor. So when I got back home, I noticed all the furniture was gone, you know. I thought that, you know, the child would be harmed by our breakup since my daughter and I were very close, but it turns out she's done very well in school. She speaks about 5 and writes 5 different languages, so she's doing very well.
In spite of the divorce?
Yeah.
Yeah, you left.
Well, I didn't leave. My wife left me over a weekend, supposedly to visit her relatives in Michigan, mm-hmm. and never came back. Mm-hmm. I didn't find out until a few days later when I went to the bank that she was actually leaving for good, because instead of 11 grand in the bank, I had $6.
Ooh. Were there no signs before that? Were there no problems? I mean, a person doesn't pack up and leave with no sign whatsoever.
There probably were signs, but I didn't recognize them until after she left. The last couple of years we were married, all I ever did was work. And it was primarily because no matter how much I did, she wanted more. Okay. She kept holding me up to her father and her oldest brother-in-law, who both made a heck of a lot more money than I did, and she expected me to have her living in the same lifestyle that they did, and I just couldn't do it.
In your survey, Dr. Davids, you find men left because of what? You talked to over 400 men, and they said what?
Men left because suddenly the marriage turned from pleasure into pain. You know, when a man gets married, he gets married to have fun. He doesn't get married saying, gee, someday...
Is that what he gets married for?
Yeah. He doesn't get married hoping someday I'm going to repair the screen door, and after I repair the screen door, I'm going to take the kids to the orthodontist, and after I take the kids to the orthodontist, I'll fix the plumbing. That's not why he gets married. He hopes there's going to be fun and pleasure and companionship. You know something? It's very interesting. Sex was not the major reason that a man gets married. I mean, sex is important in a marriage. But when a man gets married, he wants to have a relationship that's fun and companionship. And what you fail to realize is that people change, and as they change in different ways. And when the fun goes out of that relationship, the man wants out. And the fun goes out when suddenly there's more pain. He's working too hard. There's less sex. He doesn't see her. Do you know that the divorced men had sex the average about once a month? The divorced men in the survey went out with their wives about once a month. Usually if they had kids, that meant going out with the kids. Most of what they talked about was the television show. That isn't what's fun in a relationship.
I think one of the most interesting facts to come out of the survey is that the problems, men don't break up because of money, as we hear. They don't break up because of sex, as we often hear money and sex, or arguments about the children, because they expect to have differences in the children, but it's lack of companionship.
And you know, the number one cause of fighting is about money. Couples fight about money. But a man's not going to say one day, gee, you overspent on that dress. It cost so damn much money. Excuse me. It cost too much money. That's why I'm leaving you. No. He leaves when one day the wife says, you know something, or she behaves in a way that it's just not any fun anymore. I can think of a beautiful example of a marriage where there was a choice between redoing the family room. She wanted paneling. He wanted a new sports car. Okay, you got a choice. You're about 38 years of age. You've worked 48, 60 hours a week. You want a sports car. You're going to take the whole family in a sports car. She wants oak paneling in the family room. It sounds like a trivial matter, but one represented life.
This guy says it's
fun.
not trivial. Yeah, you know it's not trivial. Why?
Well, my first comment was, you say the men leave, but if you notice the people you've talked to here, most of them at least claim they did not leave. I don't know if the woman left or what, but at least the men claim they didn't leave. We fought about financial matters. It wasn't so much having money, it was not having enough.
Yeah, that can be a problem.
I won't comment on her point. But the symptom was money, but that wasn't.
That's not why you leave.
What really caused
the problem. You say what, Dr. Farrell?
Yeah, the money thing is a really tough one, Oprah, because in the cases of about 3 or 4 men, this first man standing right next to you said a moment ago, you know, I was working too hard, and yet there were financial problems. The other man back there said, I was on an I trip, and then when he translated I trip into, I was focused on my work. Now, what happens when women get focused on the children, we don't say, you know, women are focused on the children, they're on an I trip. But yet when men get focused on the work, they're part of the responsibility. In most marriage situations, we call them on an I trip. And the men blame themselves for that. And in a way, men should look at that, and we have to re-examine whether what often happens is the man and woman get married, and the woman gets devoted to the children, and the man gets devoted to his work. The woman gets paid for intimacy, and the man gets paid for being away from intimacy. And so there's a real conflict between the two, and then the man blames himself and says, gee, I was the anti-intimacy person, without recognizing that this was my role that I played, and I did it the best I could, and all of a sudden I wasn't going to marriage counseling, I wasn't paying attention to the cues of my wife being dissatisfied.
Okay, we'll be back. I'll let you speak when we return. Back in a moment.